We spent a day in Paris with Shakira as she opens up about her passions, her inspirations, and her latest project, a year in the making.
Every album comes with its own challenges, and I definitely don't like to repeat the same formulas. I think I would get really bored if I had to come up with the same music over and over. Being a solo artist, and a pop artist also gives you plenty of license to go in any direction you want and you feel that you need to go. So I think that this album is definitely more electronic than any of the other albums I've done in the past, but it still has that element of fusion, bringing different influences from different countries in the world, and it's something that somehow is a common thread. It's been a common thread throughout my career, trying to feed from different cultures, and in this album I think I have a little bit of Indian and dancehall and Middle Eastern and Colombian, all mixed in within this electronic context. Always playing with synthesizers and electronica and beats. I didn't know exactly how this album was going to turn out. You can never predict those kind of things, and there's nothing scarier than standing in front of a white canvas. You never know if you're going to be able to provide something new to those who expect it. But in any kind of art discipline, I think the possibilities are endless, and that's something that I always learn the hard way with every album, because I suffer through the process sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm never gonna do anything that I like, until boom, it appears magically, like, I guess if you keep rubbing the lamp, the genius of the lamp has gotta show up at some time. This has been my experience throughout the years. With every album, I get really, really nervous the first months in the studio, searching, exploring, trying things that sometimes don't work, until you find the magic, or the magic finds you while you're working. I definitely wanted this album to sound really strong on the bottom end, to have a really strong foundation, the kicks to hit really hard, and to have a little more bass than usual. And I put a lot of attention on the sonics, which I don't think I did that much in the past. I concentrated more on the lyrics or on the melodies and not so much on the sonics aspect of my albums. And this time around, I wanted to change that. I wanted to improve that. And I think that was something that I learned as a producer. Of course, I didn't have all the answers about as a producer all these years. You just learn on the run, But this time around, I learned a lot about sonics, and I'm really happy with the outcome of all that experimentation and that experimental journey. I've been in the studio for over a year, writing and arranging and overseeing every single song. And so you can imagine, guys, how excited I am to be finally out of the studio. And at some point I called my manager. I'm like, can you please take me out of here? I'm ready for hair and makeup. Just put me some clothes. I'm sick of being on my flip-flops all over, because I live in the Bahamas, So I have my home studio in the Bahamas. And so I spent a whole year in flip-flops producing this album. And it was a real fun experience. I mean, it was really great to get to work with people like Pharrell Williams, or find talents like John Hill, or regroup again with friends like Wyclef. I wrote over 60 songs. Yeah, to be more exact, 63 songs. So I spent many months searching, exploring new sounds, new ways to articulate my ideas. I wasn't entirely convinced. So the whole second half of this entire period producing the album, was I would say the most decisive one, the one that really determined the shape, the current shape of the album. So the final selection of songs was based on the songs that I wrote and produced in the last quarter of this past year. So if I would have known that, I would have saved, 8 months of work. But, you can never predict the final destination of a creative project or how you're going to actually give some shape to your thoughts and your ideas. Sometimes I just go in circles and I get lost in my own process, but that's the way I do it. And that's why it takes so long between albums. Usually I take 3 years between albums because, number one, I have to, tour. And then, I take like a couple months off. And then I get into the studio and start writing and arranging and producing, and I don't leave my songs, not even for 1 second. It's like they're my kids, and I'm an overprotective mother. I'm just like, just making sure that my kids are gonna go to Harvard one day, and I just hope so. I think I just feel like I just delivered a baby, and it looks healthy, and I'm happy to see the results, but the process is not always as direct as I wish it were. I've been writing songs since I was 8, and inspiration is still a mystery to me. I feel that sometimes images navigate in my unconscious for days and days until they become songs, and they're just like, secret codes that I cannot even translate or recognize myself until they make themselves concrete, in the form of a lyric or a melody. In the case of She-Wolf, I was actually working on the instrumental track of the song when suddenly the image of the She-Wolf came into my head, and there it stayed. And when I least expected it, I was howling and panting, and that was it. I really don't know how it happened to me. So I went to a corner and started writing the lyrics and the melody at the same time of the first half of the song, the whole first verse and pre-chorus and chorus. And that's actually something very unusual, to write melody and lyrics at the same time. So it happened in a very spontaneous way. It came to me like in the form of a visceral reaction to something. I don't know exactly what. Maybe the moment in which I am today as a woman. But I guess She-Wolf is not only about me, being a She-Wolf. I think that She-Wolf is not only me. She-Wolf is the woman of our time. Or why not even the man of our time, I think that we all have a part within ourselves that we hide from the world. And we have lots of subconscious desires that we're not even aware of. And I think the She-Wolf is the individual that is in touch with those desires and defends them with teeth and claws like a nocturnal animal. So I guess the She-Wolf is that primal side of us, or of me at least, that definitely exists and definitely wants to be heard. I wanted the video to have also a sense of joy at the end, I didn't want the video to be dark or to be too literal, I wrote the entire story from beginning to end. I wanted the video to be completely surreal, and that's why I used the golden cage. I think that's a very important metaphor within this video, because it somehow represents the many years I felt inside a golden cage, with the animal inside anticipating and longing to come out. So in a way, I think it is a very accurate way of how I felt, as a woman, as a person. Not anymore. But I have definitely been there. So when I was inside that cage and they hit play, I completely zoned out. I got possessed by the spirit of the She-Wolf. And I started doing all these outrageous things, hanging from the bars, going upside down. I lost it. I got completely carried away. but I just felt so inspired, you know. It was an improvisation. All the moves that you saw in the cage were improvised, were just an expression of the moment, and were completely spontaneous. And I felt so good inside that cage. I don't know what was that, but it was tremendously. I was tremendously connected to the moment, to the sentiment, to the message that I wanted to express in the song. And I also wanted the video to be a little playful. So that's why at the end, you know, there's a little hidden code that only the public knows, you know. There's this, I think that the public or the viewer has been, throughout the video, has been an accomplice with me, you know, and my adventure as a she-wolf at night. I prepared myself for an entire month, and I trained really, really hard and ate a lot of spinach and fish. I love fish though, but I think I had an overdose of organic foods, and I love fruits, but I couldn't eat that many, so I was, you know, I'm like a chocolate addict, and I had to kind of stay away from them for a little bit. Sometimes I would be in the studio, finish mixing She-Wolf, because I actually spent a whole month mixing it. You know, I wrote the song in 10 minutes, at least the first half of the song, but I spent a whole month mixing it, because I can get carried away like that in the studio, and it's just something I don't recommend to anybody. But, you know, it's, like I said before, it's my own creative process, and sometimes it's hard for me to let go until I'm completely convinced that I love how things sound. So sometimes I would be working in the studio until late, but I knew that day I didn't work out, so I would come back at 2 in the morning and swim for 1 hour, you know. I'm not trying to victimize myself. Hey, I enjoyed the process. It's fun to train and feel stronger. And it gave me a lot of stamina for the long hours that we used to shoot this video. But you know, it definitely took some commitment and determination from my side. I never did anything like that in my life, you know. I was always kind of like inconsistent about fitness and exercise, you know. There were months I would work out. There were weeks I wouldn't. Never very disciplined. But this time around, I'm like, I have to really get strong. I have to get strong for this video. I completely feed from my fans and from their energy, and I absolutely need their approval and their blessing on everything I do. You know, it is great to know that there is a group of people out there supporting you, accompanying you for many years. You know, I've had a career in Latin America since I was 18. So imagine, it's almost 14 years of challenges and trying to reinvent new ways of presenting my music and explore new routes and ways to communicate with my fans. And in the Anglo world, I'm relatively new. You know, I have only released 3 albums, but still it's a very young relationship, but it's just full of energy. And with every new album, I feel that I'm starting from zero, that I haven't accomplished anything, that I have so much to prove to myself and so much to grow and learn. And I just feel so lucky to know that my fans are so understanding of what I do. You know, they completely, you know, I guess they know me really well. I guess there is a level of identification between them and I that is undeniable. At least I feel that I'm very similar in my views, in the way in my idiosyncrasies, my ideologies, with artists that I admire. And I think that they might feel the same connection, you know, with me, ideologically speaking, or emotionally. I guess we must be very similar, you know. If they listen to my songs, if they understand what I'm trying to say, if they support a song like She-Wolf, which is completely different than everything I've done in the past, and they say, yeah, we like it. Why not? You can do whatever you want. We're behind you. That is the most amazing feeling. And that's why I have to look decent for them, you know, and that's why I worked out for an entire month and a half to look good for that on that video, because, man, they deserve it. And yeah, when I was like, you know, I couldn't sweat one more drop. I was just thinking about them. I was like, I gotta surprise them this time. I gotta look good for them, you know. So after my last world tour, I decided to take a small break and go to the university, which is something I always wanted to do, and study history of the Western civilization, which is a fascinating subject matter to me. And it's very interesting because I never really showed that much of an interest when I was in school, but after I left school and as an adult, I just love history. So I thought that was the only window I had to actually live a semi-normal student life. So I signed myself up for classes at UCLA, and I took a summer course, and then I resumed my artistic activities. You know, but it was a lot of fun. I had to wear a cap and a big backpack and baggy pants and sneakers, and I pretty much looked like a boy, you know. But I really want to be unnoticed during the classes, and there were a couple of people who were looking at me very suspiciously, you know, looking at me like if I was an alien from outer space. I know that person. And a few people ask me, "Are you Shakira?" I'm like, "No, I'm Isabel, and I'm here to study. No more questions." But it was really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. And then after that, I started, you know, writing and creating this album, working on the production of this album, and going back and forth to Colombia, since we were developing a very important project, very challenging project, a school for 1,800 students that required a lot of my attention. So I dedicated a big portion of my time during this past year to keep the wheels in motion and to this specific project, which has been really one of the most satisfying things I've ever done, one of the most fulfilling things life has given me the opportunity to do. It's a state-of-the-art school that provides quality education for the children, also nutrition. Food is such an important component because a kid with an empty stomach cannot learn, cannot receive or absorb or keep any information. And what these schools offer is not only education for the children, but also a community center for the families. These are schools with open doors that receive everyone within the community, and we share our sports facilities, or occupation. We provide occupational training for the parents. So it's a very comprehensive program. It's not only, you know, providing education and that's it. It's just really being present in a place where there's sometimes not even the presence of the government. And unfortunately, that's the situation in many of the countries in the developing world. So this is just a model that we have developed and that we feel very proud of, because, you know, it has taken us years and years to get here. I've been dreaming about this school since I was 15 years old, you know. I established my foundation when I was 18 in Colombia. And since then, we've been working on education, which is a cause that I passionately believe in as an infallible strategy to fight poverty and to break the cycle of poverty. So it is a very fulfilling thing. It's as fulfilling as my career, and it's just something I recommend to anybody, you know, to get involved in, because everybody can help in any way. I started really, really small when I was 18, you know, with very small efforts, and every year we can accomplish a little more and a little more because we're learning as we go. But everybody can definitely help in their small way. You know, I think what keeps me going and what keeps me hungry as an artist is that I find through my career so many vehicles to express myself, you know, to express my ideas. And one of them is touring. It's the live shows. You know, I can put so much on that basket. You know, I can let my imagination fly and just go to any place and then try to make that a reality and put it in the form of a mise en scène, you know, on the stage. And that's one of the things that my career provides me. One of the satisfaction that it gives me is to, you know, to perform in front of a group of people, you know, because one aspect of my career is the recording studio, then is the promotion, you know, the hair and makeup, getting ready, you know, looking decent, and then the most exciting part, I think, is when you are ready to hit the road, you know, and pack your bags and you know, and enjoy the ride. Because I particularly consider myself very lucky to have a band who's been with me for a long time. I mean, the core of the band, like my drummer and my guitar player, and my keyboard player, they've been with me for like 11 years. And so we have a great relationship and we have a lot of fun on the road and have plenty of laughs, and that's so important, you know, not to be touring with a bunch of strangers we haven't really shared anything with. So we have lots of anecdotes and we have a life on the road, you know, and that is very exciting. So I can't wait to go on the road again, hopefully next year. Yeah, and then another album again.